Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the thriller crime films from 2010, titled Cold Fish. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The movie is based on true events in Japan, and it all begins with a woman named Taiko, shopping at a supermarket, looking frustrated. Upon arriving home, she prepares frozen food, and then sits down to have dinner with her husband, Shimoto, and daughter, Mitsuko. The silent family dinner is suddenly interrupted when Mitsuko gets a call from her boyfriend, who has appeared outside, so she rudely rushes out of the house, while her parents are too timid to say anything. After dinner, Shimoto tries to be intimate with his wife, but she gently refuses, saying Mitsuko could return at any second. Upset and overwhelmed, he throws up all the food in the bathroom. Not long after, Shimoto receives a distressing call about his daughter, after which he and his wife hurriedly head outside. They soon arrive at a supermarket, where the manager is seen harshly scolding Mitsuko, who was caught shoplifting. Shimoto nervously apologizes to the manager, and begs him not to call the police, but the latter refuses, as this isn't the first time she has done this. Amid the tense discussion, a rich man named Murata arrives to calm the situation, and it turns out he was the one who caught the girl red-handed. He tries to steer the conversation toward a massive puraruku fish he got, which impresses the manager. Here Murata is intrigued to learn that Shimoto also owns a tropical fish store like him, so he invites the family to his shop. He also persuades the manager to forgive Mitsuko this time, firmly assuring him that she won't do it again. Upon their arrival at Murata's store, the family is stunned by the luxurious store, and Shimoto admits that his own business is nothing compared to this. Shortly after, a beautiful woman approaches them, and Murata introduces her as his wife, Aiko. Afterward, Murata entertains Mitsuko and Taiko and makes them laugh, which surprises Shimoto. It turns out that Taiko is actually Mitsuko's stepmother, and they usually don't get along. He recalls a flashback in which Mitsuko is brutally beating up a helpless Taiko for trying to replace her dead mother. Afterward, Murata suggests that Mitsuko work at his store, as there are 6 other female employees, who live in a dormitory that comes with the job. The family seems pleased by the idea, and the old man eagerly insists on seeing Shimoto's store as well. After that, they all head to Shimoto's store, which is much smaller, but Murata comments that the fish look incredibly lively here. The next morning, it's Mitsuko's first day at work, and her parents also accompany her. After introducing Mitsuko to the other employees, Aiko sends Shimoto home, but asks his wife to stay for a while to discuss something important. Later, Taiko is in Murata's office, where she thanks him for everything he has done for her daughter. They chat casually at first, but soon, the old man brings up the tension between Mitsuko and Taiko. Taiko worries it is her fault for Mitsuko's shoplifting, but Murata states that it is Shimoto's fault for not disciplining his daughter. And then, in a shocking turn, the rich old man touches her inappropriately and demands she undress. And when she resists, he begins slapping her repeatedly. The bizarre part is that Taiko appears to enjoy it, and the tension between them explodes as they become intimate right there. Upon returning home, Taiko seems in an unusually cheerful mood. She then tells her husband that Murata had proposed a business partnership, which they must accept. Shimoto is hesitant, as they only met Murata yesterday, but she reminds him of what he did for their daughter. She argues that this opportunity can make their family wealthy very soon, and after much insistence, he reluctantly agrees. In the next scene, Shimoto returns to see Murata, who introduces him to his business partner, Yoshida, and legal consultant, Tsutsui. Murata shows them an imported tropical fish worth about 10 million yen each, and explains his plan to breed it. The 4 men then head to the office for a discussion, but Yoshida is skeptical that a fish could be worth that much. After exchanging some heated words, Murata asks Yoshida to leave, and declares that from now on, only he and Shimoto will be partners. The confused Shimoto then takes him aside and reveals that he hasn't decided on anything yet, and is just here to talk. He doesn't even have any money, but Murata reassures him that he won't need to invest. When they return to the room, they notice that Yoshida has already signed the deal, and a huge sum of money sits on the table. Afterward, Aiko enters the room with some drinks, after which the men begin celebrating the deal. But after the legal consultant Tsutsui leaves, things take a dark turn when
言いましたよ。言ったかもな。どうかしました。すみません、村田さん。水もらえますか。
Yoshida suddenly feels a sharp pain in his throat. Worried, Shimoto quickly offers him some water, but Murata suddenly tells him not to help. Shimoto is paralyzed with horror when Yoshida collapses lifelessly in front of him. Here Murata reveals that he was annoyed that Yoshida was taking too long to make a decision, and warns Shimoto that the same fate will befall him if he ever defies him. He further boasts that Yoshida was his 58th victim, and he has never been caught because he's a perfectionist. Afterward, Murata and Aiko hand Shimoto a pair of gloves, and force him to help them. They cover the body with a blanket, and carry it to the trunk of their car. Up next, a shaken Shimoto is forced to drive for the deranged couple, and they soon arrive at an old cabin in the mountains. The three carefully take the body inside, and place it in a bathtub. Here, Murata orders the traumatized Shimoto to stay in another room, and threatens to harm his family if he tries to escape. The couple then begins dismembering the dead body, while the terrified Shimoto is shaking with fear. Later, when Murata summons him to the bathroom, Shimoto is horrified to see the floor covered in scattered chunks of flesh. He feels like throwing up, while Murata hands him the dead man's expensive watch, and orders him to make coffee for them. After cleaning up the mess, Murata opens up to Shimoto, and reveals that the cabin once belonged to his father. When he was a child, his father locked him here and did horrible things to him, leaving him deeply traumatized. The next morning, Shimoto is forced to burn the bones in a barrel, until they turn to ashes. After that, Murata takes him to a bridge deep in the forest, where the old man throws the pieces of flesh into the river, and scatters the powdered bones. Shimoto is shaken by the whole ordeal, but Murata calmly assures him that the body is now invisible, and no one will ever find out what happened. He then orders Shimoto to go home, and threatens to harm his family if he shares this to anyone. Upon returning home, Shimoto apologizes to his wife, saying he was out drinking with Murata all night, and expresses how much he loves her. He tries to act normal, but the horrors of the night weigh heavily on him, and he struggles to keep his composure. The next day, Shimoto returns to see Murata, who is with Tsutsui and a young man. He asks to take his daughter home, but Murata and his wife insist that she's better off staying here. Just then, Aiko receives a call from Yoshida's brother, who is furious that Yoshida has gone missing. He threatens to come to their store, but she simply hangs up. Murata then comments that Yoshida has become invisible, during which we realize that Tsutsui is also aware of his crimes. Afterward, Shimoto approaches his daughter, and tries to convince her to come home, but she angrily responds that she doesn't want to live with her whore stepmom. Aiko separates them, and tells Shimoto they've a bigger problem, because Yoshida's family is coming tomorrow. Afterward, Murata and his wife begin teaching Shimoto exactly what to say when Yoshida's family arrives. The poor man reluctantly complies, and they make him practice his speech again and again. Later, while Shimoto leaves for home, Tsutsui offers to give him a ride, and introduces the young man as his driver. But before they can leave, Aiko suddenly joins them, claiming she has some sweets to give to Shimoto's wife. On the way, Tsutsui suddenly tells Shimoto that he's tired of Murata, and plans to kill him, so when the day comes, he will need his help. A stunned Shimoto thinks it's a trap, but Tsutsui assures him it isn't, and begins inappropriately touching Aiko, revealing they're having an affair. He claims that he's going to be the new boss, and when Shimoto doesn't say anything, Tsutsui angrily stops the car. He begins beating up Shimoto, and threatens to make him invisible if he doesn't help him. The next morning, Yoshida's brother, who turns out to be a Yakuza, shows up with his members, and storms into Murata's office. He demands to know where his brother is, and Shimoto delivers his rehearsed speech. He claims Yoshida decided to opt out, and they paid him a cancellation fee, after which they haven't seen him. The aggressive man refuses to believe this, so Murata pretends to be devastated and begins crying. He states that Yoshida is a grown man, and might have taken a couple of days off to have some fun. Tsutsui also defends Murata, saying he's a harmless old man, after which the Yakuza reluctantly leave. Later, while Shimoto is heading home, A detective approaches him to question him about Yoshida, but the terrified man denies any knowledge of him. The detective then shows him a picture of a man, and reveals that he used to work for Murata, and has now disappeared along with his wife and kid. He claims that around 30 people have already vanished around him, and hopes Shimoto won't be next. Before leaving, the detective hands him his card, asking him to contact him if he decides to cooperate. Meanwhile, Tsutsui and Aiko arrive at his home, where they begin getting intimate, while the driver watches them with excitement. On the other hand, Shimoto gets a call from Murata, who accuses him of hiding something, and angrily asks him to come to his office. Upon his arrival, Shimoto finds Murata extremely angry, as it turns out he has discovered Aiko's affair with Tsutsui. He asks the terrified Shimoto to take him to Tsutsui's place. When they arrive, Shimoto notices Tsutsui lying in bed after being poisoned, and realizes the entire situation was orchestrated by the deranged couple. Both pretend to be devastated, and Aiko claims she has called an ambulance. But the driver notices that Tsutsui is already dead, and realizes that Aiko never called the ambulance. He then panics and tries to call for help. But upon seeing this, Shimoto cowers in shock, but Murata orders him to take care of their new victims, and threatens to kill his family if he refuses. The three then wrap the dead, and carefully load them into the car trunk. Hours later, they arrive at the remote cabin, where the couple repeats the horrifying process of dismembering the bodies in the bathroom. Later, when Shimoto brings them coffee, Murata tells him that he wants him to become his apprentice, and learn the art of making humans invisible. He demonstrates how to cut flesh into small pieces, and carefully separate bone from meat. Murata also admits that he did not kill Tsutsui invisibly because of Aiko, but because he was greedy, and wanted more money from him. Then, he terrifies Shimoto by showing him Tsutsui's severed head, causing the poor guy to vomit in disgust. The next day, after burning the bones and clothes, the three arrive at the bridge to dispose of the meat and ashes. After Shimoto throws everything away, Murata tells him he's done a good job, and shockingly asks him to make love with Aiko as a reward. Shimoto obviously refuses, so Murata makes fun of him by calling him a pervert, saying he only sent his daughter away so he could sleep with his wife in peace. He also reveals that he once slept with Taiko, which enrages Shimoto to the point that he punches the old man. As a result, the two get into a fight. During this, we see that Murata humiliates Shimoto in front of Aiko, and goads him into a fistfight to prove his worth. The old man asks Shimoto to hit him more, but Shimoto suddenly stops, and begins crying, which infuriates Murata. And so, he grabs the shaken man, and forces him to get intimate with Aiko. In a shocking twist, Shimoto suddenly grabs a pen and plunges it into Aiko's neck. He then attacks Murata as well, and stabs him repeatedly, leaving him badly injured. But what's even more bizarre is that an injured Aiko laughs uncontrollably at the sight of her husband being brutally stabbed. Later, Shimoto drives the car to a cabin, while an injured Murata is hallucinating his father abusing him as a child. The two then bring the old man inside, where Shimoto hands Aiko a knife, and asks her to finish him off. But the psycho woman instead grabs a TV, and brutally smashes his head until he finally dies. Afterward, Shimoto gives Aiko the task of making him invisible like the others, and she agrees without hesitation. He then declares that he is the new Murata now, and that she's his woman before kissing her. In the next scene, Shimoto arrives at Murata's store, and tells her daughter to come home with him. When she refuses, the stricter man now starts hitting her over and over, then forcefully drags her away. Upon reaching home, the family is having a meal, right when Mitsuko gets a call from her boyfriend and decides to leave. But this time, Shimoto slaps her several times to stop her, but she runs outside toward her boyfriend anyway. However, the madman shockingly knocks her unconscious, before knocking out her boyfriend as well. He then carries his daughter to the house, and throws her into the living room. Afterward, Shimoto confronts his wife, and tells her he knows she slept with Murata. He then attacks her, and finally forces her to admit that she's unhappy with him, and that their marriage was a big mistake. An enraged Shimoto begins to assault her, right when his daughter wakes up, and asks him what he's doing, but he knocks her out again before resuming to assault his wife. Next, he leaves the two unconscious women, and heads to the cabin in the mountains. On the way, he informs the detective that Aiko is dismembering her husband's body, and even gives the address. Not long after, Shimoto returns to the cabin, and finds Aiko in the bathroom. She excitedly tells him she's halfway done and then begins to kiss him. Aiko starts to pleasure him when, all of a sudden, Shimoto strikes her in the head. The injured Aiko complains about the pain, but still wants to make love to him, which leads to a brutal struggle between them. After an intense fight, she somehow manages to pin him down, but then Shimoto grabs a knife and brutally stabs her. Finally defeated, Aiko drags herself to the bathroom, and begins caressing her husband's half-dismembered body before taking her last breath. Not long after, the detectives finally arrive at the cabin and find a bloodied Shimoto, who directs them inside. He then notices that his wife and daughter have also arrived with the officers. Meanwhile, the detectives are confronted with the lifeless bodies of the couple, with organs spilled across the room, horrifying them to their core. Outside, Taiko rushes to her husband to hug him, but he suddenly drives a knife into her gut, killing her instantly. Upon seeing this, Mitsuko is horrified, and Shimoto tells her that she will finally get her wish of living on her own, and taking care of herself. He then attacks her and makes a small cut. Mitsuko cries out, saying it's painful, but Shimoto angrily says, "Life is pain," before slitting his own throat and bleeding to death. The sight stuns Mitsuko, but she shockingly begins rejoicing over her father's death, and kicks the corpse as the movie comes to a bizarre end. Okay guys, thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.